Evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome back, everyone, to Monday Night Live. We are super excited to have you with us this evening. Normally we meet on the fourth Monday of every month. However, in the interest of our partnership with the Newark Women Moving Forward campaign, we wanted to make sure that we were available on the first Monday, in this case, because of the holiday, the second Monday, to just kind of get together and have our conversation about Monday Night Live. This is a space where we talk about all things D-free, all things financial, and we're trying to be really responsive to the things that you all have said are important to you. And so, case in point, we have two amazing guests with us tonight. But before we get started, we'll jump into our housekeeping. First and foremost, we always ask that you mute in order to minimize distractions and to reduce the amount of microphone feedback. Again, if you want to join the conversation, we invite you to unmute yourself. This session is always recorded, but it's available through our website, which is dfreefoundation.org, or you can find it on our YouTube channel. I am positive that after today's session, you are going to want to share this information with someone else. The chat feature is always open during our conversation so that if you have any questions, you can always jump in the chat. And you can also check it often for links because we have Josh that is with us so faithfully every week, dropping links. So if we mention something, you're going to find it in the chat and you can just go right to it. If you want to be joined in the conversation and you want to share your thoughts, I just invite you to use that raised hand feature. That way I can recognize you and bring you into the conversation. So tonight we have some amazing conversation ahead of us. We are starting with the end in mind. I know, typically this may feel like a morbid conversation, but it is necessary. We are finding that in the end, we want to make sure that when it's time for us to hang up our boots, whether it's a job that we love or something we're stepping out of, retirement. We want to be able to plan for retirement. We want to know what that looks like. The second thing is, we know that we all have an expiration date, and though we don't want to talk about it, we don't want to leave our families with debt and with GoFundMe's in order to pay for our expenses. And so we want to kind of dive into that. So I know the conversation might feel a little uncomfortable, but we're going to try and put it where you can reach it tonight. And so we always recognize our CEO and chair, Dr. DeForest B. Storage Jr., chair of D Free Global Foundation, and we are grateful for him. Tonight we have with us Mr. Darren Miles, and he is going to be our first guest. And he's from Prudential Financial, but I'll let him share a little bit about him. So give me a moment. You also see another person on the screen. I want to share who she is as well. Her name is Chandra Bettner Gray, and super excited to have her. She's the managing attorney, but with her own law firm, but super excited to have her because she's going to talk to us about wills, estate, and probate. Oh, it sounds like the Charlie Brown teacher to me, but welcome to you guys. Every time I hear some of these terminologies, especially financial terms, and even retirement and all the funds and things that are out there, it sounds literally like the Charlie Brown teacher to me because it's so intimidating. You know, that want, all those languages. So please, you got to help us out. Darren, I'm starting with you, Mr. Miles. Please tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the invite and the opportunity to share a lot of information. That is kind of my mission. It's part of my mission is to really help a lot of people. And sometimes I'm really able to help people in a lot of ways that don't come very often. So I've been doing insurance and finance and retirement planning roughly about 10 years. This is what's known as a sunset career for me. I worked in engineering for about 20 years on cell sites and all these sorts of things. And I landed here because I was trying to help my family and myself get further. We were starting to make really good money. And it was like, okay, what could we do with this money? Because we're making money and we were still having problems with our bills, with managing, but we were making very good income. So I was trying to figure that out. And that got me further into finance and my 401k and insurance and all these other things. And that kind of got me on the road. I started helping my family and my friends until they didn't want to hear it anymore, right? Because after a while, they get tired of hearing it. They feel like you're trying to recruit them or whatever have you, which is another story, right? So my wife and I, we've had a couple of small businesses over the years. And during the last time that we sold one of our businesses. I said I would go full time in a career change and I would take the leap. I'm almost an empty nester, so I have a lot of room to kind of stretch out, stretch my legs, and decide to go a direction I wanted to go. And that's what kind of brought me here.
So this is interesting. Even as you talk and you speak about your how you ended up here with this career, you mentioned a couple of businesses and all that. It sounds like you had money to be able to retire. What about the person that does not have money? I mean, is it something that you have to have ahead of time? Like, how much should people be looking at this just to get started?
So, I mean, you know what? So when you're talking like this, it sounds like I have a whole lot of money. I have a whole lot, right? I have a whole lot of money. The difference there is risk and willingness to take risk. That's an attitude mindset, right? I've had losses as well as I've had wins. I've had businesses close and go out of business because I was eaten up by the competitors or there was a change in the industry. And I've also been able to sell one or two things. So saving your money, consistently saving your money, getting with a good partner. This is one of the biggest underrated things. If you are going to have a spouse or partner, whatever you call it today, right? Having a good partner that's not going to be a spendthrift or is not going to be less than sophisticated when it comes to making better decisions about credit, home buying, and some of these things. And one of the things I'm going to cover later talks to that, speaks to that. So, no, you don't have to be rich. You need to be focused.
Mm, that is such a key point. We need to be focused. I always hear focus and discipline with that. Now, as part of your service, do you help folks to get focused, to start to like, I don't know what, if I was just, retirement 101 and I hadn't really gotten out the gate yet, what do you suggest? Is it too late, to start? What age is too late and how do you get focused?
So there is no too late. There just isn't. I mean, is it too late to start losing weight? Is it too late to start trying to get healthy? Is it too late to do a lot of the things that maybe you've put off or maybe you haven't done as well as you may have wanted to do? You're going to see people along the landscape of life that are further ahead, that are further behind, that are just getting started, that are just learning. All those things are going to be there. It's never too late because first you're going to work on the basics. If you move away, if you take that whole rich thing away,
Right.
for a second
Mhm.
and you just focus on managing your life, whatever it is that's going to make you content, that is the focus. And then you can start working in that direction. And that might include you need to get in more income. Because if you're not getting the income you want to get, now you need to work on that, right? Whether it's another job, work hard on your current job, and then we can start planning around that, right? If you want to buy a Maserati, well, you probably may need to earn more, right? You might need to earn more, right? So if you could say, well, I want to buy a Bentley, then you might need to earn a little bit more. So if you could accept that, then there it is. That's where you start with the planning.
Well, this is good. This is really, really good. So tell me, what are like the three biggest retirement mistakes people make? When we're like, getting involved or, what would you say they are?
So you said I wanted to make sure I took notes because I wanted to make sure to cover these things.
Okay.
Okay. Um, your three biggest mistakes. I've helped people with a lot of different things. One, in our community, right? And I say in our community, Black and Brown community, there are others, and I deal with everyone, but I mostly deal in the Black and Brown community. That's just the way that it works out. Being too conservative. So either
Mhm.
wanting 300% return or not willing to take any risks, right? And I'm not telling you you should jump out and take risks. However, I am saying you need to figure out where could you take the risks. Let it be a calculated return, a calculated risk, so that you could possibly have your money work for you as hard as you're working. So that's number one, being too conservative. Number two, I find all too often that I am the myth buster. You probably know the show Mythbusters, right? So people are watching TikTok, Instagram, and all these things, and they're coming to me about index universal life, and I put all this money in, and I could do self banking, I could do all these different things. Chasing yesterday's returns or pop culture beliefs. That's
Wow.
a big mistake. What I find is people are doing that every 2 to 3 years. It's kind of like the MLM thing. Every 2 to 3 years, There's some MLM that's the hottest thing that everybody got to get involved with. And what happens is you look up 20 years later and you've been cycling. You've been
Right.
cycling a 1 to 3 year time frame. So that's the second thing. And the third, it affects the most amount of people, especially again in our community, and that is assuming that you're not going to live long.
Hmm.
All too often, we in our community, a lot of the clients I deal with um, are under the belief they're not going to live very long.
Wow.
Now, there's a lot of reasons, a lot of things that shape your thoughts over the years. But if you're thinking you're not going to live very long, subconsciously, you're not planning for that. So the buying of insurance, the long-term care, planning for risks when you get older, all these things impact your mindset and the way that you decide what to do, when to do it, how much to put aside. It's kind of like my mother used to say, and I refer to my mother a lot. So maybe I will tonight, maybe I won't. But not believing in tomorrow.
Hmm.
If you don't feel like you have no tomorrow, she used to tell me, boy, you spend money like it ain't no tomorrow. And I did. So not believing you have a tomorrow. So what happens is a lot of people think that they're going to just work till they die.
Right.
They don't think that they're going to be sick. They think that Medicaid may kick in. A lot of clients I deal with are working class clients. They're not the most, we call it the mass affluent, and they're working class and they do very well for themselves, but they're not rich, like super rich. And so what happens is I tell a lot of clients, well, listen, we need to plan for this. You'll never be on welfare.
Wow.
And Chandra probably will get to this a little bit later because people then try to retrofit themselves. I'm sure Chandra probably can nod ahead to this, retrofit themselves to fit into welfare, right? After they've already retirement and they have a lot of health issues going on and things like that, and they try to fit into welfare because they have their home, they want to get Medicaid. So those are the three biggest things. Being too conservative with their investments, chasing yesterday's returns, or having outsized expectations and wanting to invest if they don't reach those. And the third is the assumptions that they make to avoid planning, assuming I'm not gonna live long enough, so I'm not gonna need it. My kids are gonna take care of me. I don't need to save money. These things are gonna happen. So that assumption lets them be more complacent.
Wow, you have already busted quite a few myths in just the 10 minutes that we've been speaking. Um, one, I guess I want to know, and as the audience is coming in, feel free to type your questions in the chat as well, because we are going to address them at the close of this conversation. Um, if I'm getting out the gate, what does retirement look like? What does the plan look like? Is it something that I want to do? Is it insurance that I want to get? Is it investing in a particular stock? Like what is that package? Is there a good mix we should be looking for as a person that's starting retirement?
So that's a very good question. And without getting into any technicals, I'll just keep it really simple, just like when you're getting out the gate with anything else. Um, the first thing you do, if you're buying a home, if you're buying a car, if you decide you're going to go lose weight, if you decide you have a goal in mind, basically, the first thing you're going to do is assess where you are today. So you're going to get an idea of where do you stand today. And a lot of people don't want to fit it. I just don't have any money. I'll just say that could hear this, you are the money.
Hmm.
You are the money. And what I mean by that is during your working years, in my world, during your working years, you are operating like a bond. A bond puts out money and creates income, right? A bond has value. Say you put $10,000 into a bond and it pays out 5%. It's paying out $500 consistently because you are the bond. You're that, whatever you invested into your health, whatever it is that you do, your skill, it creates income. That income consistently comes out until you retire.
Hmm.
So even if you don't have a lot to start, whatever you do, whether you change tires or you're a lawyer, you keep putting out income consistently until you retire. It doesn't matter what your occupation, you're putting out income until you retire. And that income is considered to be like a bond, right? So now starting from there, okay, I know what my income will be from now for the next 5 years if I stay where I am today, or if I increase it, or if I get more skills, or I get more accreditations, whatever. And so now you where you are, and now you can kind of start to calculate how much you can save and what you can do, whether you have credit issues to get out of the way, right? Or things you want to acquire along the way. So that's one of the first things. And that applies to everyone. No matter who you are, you're creating income like a bond is. And everything else would be like the market.
Okay.
Even in a couple situation, everything else would be like a market, right? It would be like investing in the market. But you're the bond. You're consistently putting out income. So if you say I make $100,000 a year, in 10 years, you're going to make $1 million. Of that, you probably take home 700,000 or 600,000. And we can just start calculating from there. You know what your output is going to be.
Mm. Whew. It sounds so like simple when you put it that way. So we're definitely gonna have to start looking at reimagining our money and how we can take the little we have and make it stretch to be able to to increase, especially in preparation for retirement. One of my key takeaways from our conversation is the fact that you're right. We do tend to think that we will not live long. That whole thing. We already have the end in mind, and that kind of is a great segue to bring on our next guest. We're going to ask you some more questions while our audience is getting their questions together. If you have any questions about retirement and retirement planning, start thinking of them now. You can drop them in the chat, or we can come back and you can actually ask them live and join the conversation shortly. As we switch over to our next guest, I'm going to go ahead and put her information. Oh, and we have everyone's information as well. So please, y'all know that we have that for you as well. So there's the next guest who's coming now, who is with us, is Miss Chandra Hartsey, Chandra Bettner Gray. We're super excited to have you with us. And again, I want to soften the audience because I know some of you have just joined. We are talking about preparing with the end in mind, starting with the end in mind. So we talked a little bit about retirement, but now we want to get into some technical things. And I call them technical because these are big words that come up in level 3 of the D-Free curriculum, which is where we get control and we get ahead rather. And in that curriculum, there's a section that people inevitably ask us about. They always ask about wills, estates, and estate planning, and probate. And what does all of this mean? So before we jump into that, Chandra, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. My name, like was mentioned, is Chandra Bettner Gray, and I do have a practice in Burlington County, New Jersey, where my primary focuses are estate planning, probate, real estate, landlord tenant. And I'm quite passionate about all of them, but at the forefront is estate planning, because I've been exposed to probate and a lot of the difficulties that arise, particularly in the Black and Brown communities, but we see it, nationwide, every demographic, but especially focus on and education, like Mr. Miles mentioned. This is what I feel is a part of my purpose, is to get information to the folks. And I believe that when we have information, we make better decisions. So that's what I say about myself.
I'm telling you, I'm so glad you gave that background because my next question was going to be like, how does someone get into that? Because it's such a sensitive place to be. As you mentioned, we're both ministers, and I know that even when dealing with a family that is grieving or it's just such an uncomfortable spot to be in. And now you have the aftermath, the aftercare, and really sorting this stuff out. And y'all know in the Black and Brown community, that is one way to even separate families. Like people, get into some things when it comes around, around that. So how are you able to, well, first of all, how are you, does your ministerial background factor into how you assist families in these areas?
It does. It's so interesting because I have to, obviously I tread lightly, but I think that I came into this because of my own experience with loss, death, and grief. I didn't imagine that I would be dealing with that in my career, but I lost my mother at a very early age. I was just a teenager. And so death has always been present in my life. And then, as you mentioned, as a part of my ministry, then I'm always serving families as they go through. So I do believe that I'm able to kind of meet my clients where they are when they come on the probate side of things. And it has informed my estate planning practice because it's given me a sense of urgency to educate and help empower people before death to put things in place so that the worst case scenarios don't occur for us. Because I do see it where families are breaking down, where we lose major assets because things were not planned for. And even though Mr. Miles says we people think that they're not going to live long, I actually feel that I have an experience on the other side where people pretend like they're going to live forever, and so they put off having these conversations. They don't want to talk about it, and in fact, I think and subconsciously believe that if we have the conversations, that somehow we advance our death or these things occurring, instead of being insurance, which is really what we should think of it as.
Wow, that is
Does
so
that make sense?
It does. It makes perfect sense. I come from a family of planners, and my mother was one that like had the obituary written, had her, who's gonna sing, she had it all laid out. So it was very easy. As we faced her death, it was easy for my brother and I to just kind of put things in place because she set everything up. My question to you is, before we even get into how we would set things up, can you just give us the definition or like the terminology? Because there are a lot of big words, when you hear surrogate and you hear estate and you hear wills, and all those things can be a little daunting for someone, especially when you're facing that situation.
Yes. So when we're talking about estate planning, in large part, we're just talking about documents that you put in place where you put down your wishes and you identify the people who will step in for you when you can't do it. And it is fairly a simple process. Obviously, everybody's life and circumstances are different. And so that's why you should consult with an attorney to make sure that you meet your needs with these documents. But that's really all we're doing so that the state doesn't step in and put in its default laws on what happens with your estate. Now, when we talk about estate, we're talking about all of the things and assets that your life is comprised of or that you build up during your lifetime, right? So you have an estate while you're living. We don't think of it that way, but all of the things that we own is a part of our estate. So it can be as small as, I don't own a house and I don't own a vehicle, but I have a purse collection, or I have a coin collection, or I've inherited something special from my grandmother, right? All of those things are a part of your estate. So that's what that is. Does that make sense?
Oh my goodness.
And then you mentioned the word surrogate and probate. I think I have a little delay and I apologize for
It's okay.
that process. It's like the legal process after death, where you have to go to the surrogate office, which is an official office of the state that supervises the process after death of how someone's estate is distributed or handled after their death. So those
Wow.
two words go together.
Woo, that was very enlightening, and you made a very uncomfortable conversation comfortable, just by breaking down those terms. When we think of the word estate, a lot of times, or estate planning, a lot of times people think of this is for somebody with money. So, can you broke down some different things like our collection. Can you just kind of expound a little bit more about what estate planning really is for those who may not have that kind of money?
Yes. So one, estate planning is not only about when you die. So I start off with my clients with getting a power of attorney in place. and an advanced healthcare directive, right? These are things that you need in place, whether you have money or not, just because you have a life. Because things happen in life that we don't always anticipate. And of course, we hope those things don't happen, but sometimes they do. Things like a sudden change in mental status, or God forbid, a sudden illness, or some sort of an accident that puts you in a place where you're suddenly incapacitated or not at the capacity that you used to be. And you want to have these documents in place to care for you and speak for you if you're living but can't speak for yourself, right? So that doesn't even involve money at all. And then for things like a last will and testament, you want to name who you want to act for your estate, right? Maybe by default it would go to your sibling or your parent, and there's a chance maybe you don't talk to them, or maybe that's not who you would select. The law is going to do what the law is going to do if you don't tell it to do something else. So again, who your person is that stands in for you is a decision that only you can make in an estate planning document, or the state is going to say, oh, well, you didn't do it, so we're going to tell your estate how it needs to be handled and who the person is that can do it.
Oh, yeah, that right there is such a crucial point, making sure that the state doesn't decide for you. And I love the fact that you are telling us in advance to identify your person. It saves so much anguish on the family as you move forward. I know this might be a touchy one, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you anyway. What is like your biggest pain point in your industry? I mean, the thing that absolutely like, can we please get away from doing this thing? I know that one of the things we see often is that GoFundMe on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all this stuff when it comes to end times and things of that. But what is your biggest pain point?
I think it's fear. People just they don't want to have these conversations. Just not having the conversation is a major issue, because it is the reason why the biggest part of my practice, unfortunately, is the probate side. I look in the various practice areas, and probate is voluminous because, and to me, that's a pain point. And though I can earn from that, so some law firms feel like that's fine with me. Don't plan. We'll help you unravel it in probate. My heart really breaks for the families that have to endure that after losing loved ones, and then they find themselves in court and essentially having to be told by an outside party how things have to go. To me, the pain point then is just a lack of education, a lack of willingness to explore what their options are. And also this ties in with financial awareness, is being afraid that it's going to cost. Well, I'm not wealthy, or I don't have money, or how much is it going to cost? And so we run from it. But I often say in my presentations on estate planning, for really the cost of a cruise, you can take care of these things, but it'll make a difference in your life and to generations to come, instead of you just having some pictures for Instagram or social media, which, I'm not against a cruise. Like, that's my favorite thing to do. But hey, before you go to the cruise, just like before I go on a cruise, I'm gonna make sure I paid my mortgage, and I pay it a month in advance too, so I don't have to feel shame about being on a cruise. Well, in the same way, we ought to have these things in place before we go, splurge and go see the world. Do we have our estate plan in place? If we're entrepreneurs, which many of us are nowadays, if we own businesses, do we have our business documents in place? As a part of that, do we have a succession plan for our business? What happens when we die? Are we the only one holding the whole thing together? Now our family's got to figure out how to unwind our LLC or multiple businesses because we haven't put a succession plan in place.
Ooh, you are talking just driving right down our alley, right? This is so good. I want to also ask, what are some of the I guess the cardinal mistakes that people make? You mentioned a few in terms of not being prepared, but are there some things that we need to be putting in place, or some mistakes that you've seen happen that really cost folks in the long run?
Yeah, I would advise against just writing something down and putting it somewhere. That's not a great idea, especially if there's a chance, which there is, that family will fight. I just don't think people do that. You know, Aretha Franklin did that. She's one of the famous folks for having what we call holographic wills, which are like just a writing on a piece of paper somewhere with your signature. The reason this is problematic is because even though they can be enforceable, they're the most commonly disputed, and people argue about whether that was their real signature and which one came first and which one came last. And so I don't recommend that. I also honestly don't recommend just going to a website and printing something out and going to notarize it. Now, if that's the absolute last thing that you can do, then fine. But I really, really think that you need to do this with a professional who can talk to you about all of your legal rights and even obligations, because I've had people try to disinherit their spouse in a will, and I'm like, hey, I can write that down, but you should know that there is a law that says they're entitled to an elective share, right? Now, you might not know that. You go and print something out and say, I want everything to go to my kids, and I wanted to bypass my spouse, and you die thinking you've done something correctly, and your spouse is still going to get 1/3 of everything. So I think that is a mistake. Don't just print something out. Don't just write something down. And if you're going to do that, pay for a consultation. If you don't want to pay for an entire estate plan, put $100 out or $200 out, speak to an attorney, evaluate your estate, what you have and what your goals are. And then after having that, if you decide with all the information.
Whew. This is good. This is good. I hope everybody is getting something from our conversation tonight. I'm going to bring Mr. Miles back in as well, because as we talk about protecting our money and our wealth and our stuff, it's nice to have Mr. Miles who's going to help us get to that stuff. So while we're here, we're looking to find out, anybody have any questions about retirement and retirement planning or estate planning. It could be something general or comment. You know, a lot of us have seen some things, you know, in our time that, you know, didn't go so well. I was going to ask you also your 5 recommendations, like your top 5 recommendations for preparation. You know, if you're preparing for this thing, what to do. You told us what not to do, but what should we be doing? And then I'll ask the same thing of you, Mr. Miles, and then we'll take some questions from our audience tonight.
So I would say make a list of what you have, right? Sometimes we say, I don't have anything, but then when you start writing things down, you recognize, wow, I hadn't thought about how would I deal with, you know, the jewelry that I inherited? Who do I want to have, you know, the pictures that I've had from generation to generation, you know? So make a list of the things that you have. Also, you need to decide who is your person, right? I say that we all have somebody. If we don't, we really need to think about that. Who is the person that you would trust your life with? And then also have a secondary person, right? Because sometimes that person might predecease us or for some other reason not be available. So you want to think about your number 1 and your number 2. I think that's really important. Also, like I mentioned, you want to consult with an attorney regarding estate planning, and certainly even with a financial planner. Like, a consultation doesn't commit you to anything, but it does provide you with information. And you know, like you mentioned, I'm a woman of faith, and we perish for a lack of knowledge. So if you don't do anything else, get the information, make notes, ask questions. And then my number 5, if I'm at number 5 or number 4, is act on it. Then do something with the information that you've gathered so that you can really not just get wealth, but we as a people have to do better because we're getting it, right? But what are we doing with it? And are we making it so that the next generation doesn't have to start from scratch?
Woo, that is a great segue into that generational wealth that Mr. Miles is going to tell us what to do with. Mr. Miles, what are your top 5 recommendations for preparation for retirement? What should we be doing right now? Like, again, just getting out the gate. What should we be doing to leave generational wealth?
So I mentioned, well, first, let me just say, Chandra has some really great points.
Didn't she? She said,
let me tell you something. I'm going to call her myself. Okay, so that's what that is. But let me just say, so figuring where you are, right? There's a lot of fear, a lot of angst around trying to plan for tomorrow because we've been told we got to have more, we want more, right? Get that out of your mind. Just, figure where you are today. Again, if you make $50,000 now, how much is that over 10 years? A lot of presentations, I quantify savings or income or return on investment. Quantify it for yourself. So if I make $70,000 now, over the next 10 years, I would have made $700,000. Wow, that's a lot of money. What am I going to do with $700,000 over, right? How much will I have end of 10 years, right? And then that makes you want to figure out how to save it, how to put things aside, how to build money tax free, and all these things. Because you're now talking about a $700,000 bucket of money. A lot of times we're thinking, where could I get $1 million? You are the $1 million, right? So just understand that first. The second thing is emergency fund. If your home, between your rent, mortgage, your food, or whatever, your basic essential needs come to 20,000, 10,000, whatever it is, at least for the year, that is, try to come up with 3 to 6 months. That's the standard. But you can start with 1 month. Hey, have 2 months aside if anything were to happen. Chandra mentioned if you get stuck, people got stuck on the boat during COVID. People get stuck places and things happen and you get unemployed or whatever it is. If you could at least be able to continue for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, that'll put you at ease, right? So emergency fund, a lot of times people looking for return, but your emergency fund, 3 to 6 months is the standard. You figure out what works for you. I promise you, if you reach 6 months of savings for a rainy day, you'll want to have a year. I promise you that, okay? You'll feel so great about that 6 months. The other thing is guaranteed income. So when it comes to figuring out, okay, well, you know what, I want to retire, maybe you're mid-career, right? A lot of early career people aren't there yet, but they're in the best position. The younger you are, the better your position, the less you have to save, and you have a lot of time for your money to build. But a lot of folks I'm dealing with, honestly, are within 20 years of me, younger or older, and figuring exactly what their guaranteed income is going to be from Social Security, a pension. These are the key things that's going to last you. It's your fixed income that's going to be locked in. So if you have a pension, how much will it be? How much longer will you have to work? You're going to get Social Security. Do you take it at 62, 65, 67, or 70? You could talk with a financial advisor. As Chandra mentioned, you may want to just have a consultation and figure out, how do I do this? How do I go to SSA.gov, pull down what my projected income will be so I can get an idea? Oh, I'm going to get $3,000 a month or $2,000 a month. I add another $3,000 to that, and I have enough to just live, right? I'm not going to Dubai or anything, but I can live and I can feed myself, right, off of that. Okay, now what else could I do, right? So I can go to more, but I'll just finish with this last thing, and that is risk management. Chandra mentioned this also, so I'm just doubling down on everything she said because she just really killed it, right? So the risk management, you may live longer than you expected, and as she mentioned, you may not. A lot of times I do very complex strategies to build income and all these things with insurance, but I usually start with just getting some convertible term insurance, right? Convertible term. Now, I say that because a lot of times people get insurance from companies that's not convertible. And this is a key pivotal point here because you can get it for low cost. And once you're insured, you are legally, they have the legal obligation to offer you to convert it to permanent at a later date.
Can I right there for a second? Let's not take for granted that people even know what convertible insurance is. Can you tell us what that is?
Okay, so you have two different types of insurance, right? You have term, which is like you're renting, like you're leasing your car. And then you have permanent. Now, you've probably heard of whole life, universal. Anything other than term is permanent, basically.
Okay.
Now, permanent comes in a lot of different forms, a lot of different styles, for a lot of different strategies, but it's intended to last you your entire natural life. Okay. Now, it's usually more cost. It costs a lot more right? However, term is very cheap. That's the one you hear. We got Bob 750,000 for $10. I mean, that don't exist, but right. So, well, the thing there is that statistically, term only pays out 2% of the time. Only 2% of the time do people die and actually have term insurance. So that's the moneymaker for the insurance companies, right? And there's nothing wrong with making money, but that's their moneymaker, right? So, but the fact that you can get term with the option to turn it into permanent. So if you buy a $500,000 term policy, covers you for 20 years. Somewhere down the line, you decide, I see Glenmore up here, right? That's what I see on the screen. Somewhere down the line, Glenmore says, you know what? I'm becoming an empty nester now. And that insurance I had for 10 or 15 years is coming to an end. I just need something to make sure I'm good for me, my wife, and some other benefits that are available.
Mhm.
Can I make this permanent? Will it last me the rest of my life? Yes, because contractually, the term policy you have allows you to change it to permanent. And you don't have to change the entire thing. You could change just one or $200,000 and let the rest go.
Mm.
Right? It's such a great option. Most of my clients, they come in, they want to get, all these fancy policies. I usually start, let's just get you some term, get you approved, right? It's not guaranteed you'll be approved. That's the other thing.
Mhm.
People take it in our society, it's about what you can afford, right? The buyer's in control because you can afford it. But with insurance, it doesn't work that way. They have to make an offer to you based on your health and your age.
Oh,
So if we can lock you in, get you insured, then we can go back and deal with any strategy we want after that. But you're in the building now. You're in on the ground floor. You can go to any floor you want at that point, right? So risk management, and there are other things under risk management like long-term care, disability insurance for small business owners or business owners. A lot of times they don't get disability insurance, and they are at the center of their business. If they become disabled, no money,
mhm.
right? So those are my things. I didn't mean to go so long, but those are
No,
my
no,
things.
this is good. This is good. I know we got about 10 minutes left with our time together, so we definitely want to get some of these questions answered. We do have one about how often, and I think this is for both you and Chandra, um, I'm sorry. How often should we revisit our beneficiaries? And I want to start with Chandra, and then I'll touch base with you. And then we have another question in the chat that is specifically for you, Mr. Miles.
I think we should, obviously, if we're going to be looking at our estate plan, I would say every 5 to 10 years, or at certain key happenings in your life. So if you're purchasing property, if you have a birth of a child or a grandchild, or even the death of a loved one, these are signals that you should take a look at your beneficiaries and your estate plan, right? Even if it's already established. Sometimes people are at a point in life where there's not going to be many changes, but if someone you've named as a beneficiary dies, or I just did an estate plan for a young couple, all of their children are under 18. So right now, who they've appointed, it can't be their children, right? But as they approach the age of 18 or go beyond that, now they may want to consider, maybe I want my first and my second person to be one of my adult children now. So I would say you should be in when it comes to estate planning, you should be informed by the things that are occurring in your life. And then if there's no major changes, just take a look at what you have in place every, 5 to 10 years or so.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. You want to tackle that one, Mr. Miles, before we go into that second question for you?
Okay, so um, I'm a little bit more aggressive with this one. Um, so I say annually. Now, Chandra is covering something that's much broader and much more in depth, and it runs deeper, and some of these things don't change as it relates to your wills and some of these things. I
Okay.
say annually because I'm dealing with accounts a lot of times. All right. And a lot of times I'm dealing with 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans. I'm dealing with IRAs, and anything that has a beneficiary on it, you're not changing. If you die and that beneficiary's name on there, I don't care if you married her in 1972, right? During the black exploitation era, and you moved on. she is the one who's going to get, or he is the one who's going to get that account.
Hmm.
Right there. I mean, Chandra probably back me up on this one. Um, if she's the beneficiary, that's a contractual, same as with the life insurance policy. So if you die or pass on, and I run into this all the time, somebody has an old 401k, they left that job, they no longer work there, their ex-wife or their girlfriend or whoever is on that as a beneficiary. And Chandra, she's my legal person here. Even if that person died, you think, well, she died, so she go to nope again. It goes to their beneficiaries now, or in whoever their estate, whoever their heirs are. Right. So that's a big deal. So usually when I sit with people initially, we go over all their insurance, all of their 401ks, whether we're going to move money or not. We go over their bank accounts, payable on death, transfer on death. This avoids a lot of problems at the bank also. Yes.
Well, this is interesting. So I'm gonna pause right there for 1 second because I do want to get these other two questions in. I know it's 7:53. This is good. There's a question directly for you in the chat that says, is there an age limit for convertible insurance? Is there an age limit for that?
Looking at 80.
Okay.
So, and keep this in mind. Typically, so while it may be age 80, it kind of really doesn't exist, because if you're not going to get a 20-year policy or that goes over 20 years at age 60.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right? So if you have because you're going to convert from a term policy. So you may have a term policy that you bought that's even up to 30 years, 35 in some of the worst cases, but those are not convertible. I'll just tell you, the company that sells them are not convertible. So steer clear, buyer beware. But so if you're 70, 75, you bought a policy 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you got to look at the fine print, because every company is different. Some companies allow 10 years to convert, some allow the entire 20, some let you buy an extension of the time. You have to look at the fine print. Usually when I sit down in our first appointment, I'll tell you, I need you to pull those things out so I can explain that to you, and you can make a decision based on that. Maybe decide yes, no, or maybe so.
Excellent. This question is for Chandra. Is there any truth to the unclaimed money that is out there? There are a lot of states that advertise, this person was left money, or maybe it's to a relative that passed away, and then it comes down to you. Is there any truth? And is that something that you pursue through probate, if you are aware of anything?
So the answer is there's probably some truth to it, and it probably happens a lot in our community because we don't do a great job of we tend to be a little more secretive. So there's a lot of things that may be in place that we have not shared with somebody because we haven't identified our one or two person, and we maybe don't put things in writing. So I do believe that there is truth to it. And what happens a lot of times is something is left to whomever the next of kin is, and nobody ever steps forward to act on behalf of the estate. So assets do sit and wait, and they'll wait until they go back to the state. The state will at some point take those things back when there's no action. So yes, but to the extent that probate, that someone steps forward, probate might be able to uncover certain things, but I don't know that that's the actual process or vehicle to find out if something is owed to you, right? I don't know exactly. I know these companies, they do that, and I don't know how they do it. That isn't really something that we do. There is an insurance clearinghouse that if you believe that you're a beneficiary or should be a beneficiary or in line to do that, there is a way to search that, and I'm sure Mr. Miles can speak to that. I just recently did that with my grandmother's death because the person who was in charge of her was keeping information from us, and I was able to find her insurance policies, and they saw that I was her granddaughter and was able to provide me with the information that I requested. So there are ways to find things like.
Oh, that's good, but we need to have attorney at the end of our name in order to dig deep with that. No, I'm kidding. That was great. There's someone in the chat that has mentioned. Oh, thank you, Miss Connie. Saying that yes, it is true, and she works for the state government, and it's called unclaimed property in Virginia. But I would imagine that there are states all over that have that same department. So if that's you, you might want to check and see if there's some unclaimed property. Before we end, because we got like 3 minutes, I just want to wait, let me just make sure there's not another chat. Oh, okay. There's a couple things going ahead. Thank you very much for this education. I'm my mother's sole caregiver. No pre-planned plans were made. I'm my mother's person. I am Medicaid planning. I want to prevent probate. I'm at the end point where I need to transfer her home deed to me or put it in a trust. There is an exemption for caregivers that allows me to do this, but which is the best route? Not to sell, just to get it out of her name so that I can prevent probate.
I definitely would need to know more about that exemption, because as a general rule, there is a time frame, that you have to make that transfer outside of. So I'm not 100% familiar with the caregiver exemption that she's referring to. When I advise clients about Medicaid planning, you don't want to wait until it's time to make the application, because generally speaking, if you're within 5 years, if you move assets within 5 years of making that application, you will not be eligible for long-term care. So that is a concern, because if they find that you moved assets for the purposes of qualifying for Medicaid within that 5-year period, you will be penalized essentially. So they will say, no, for this period of time, you will not be eligible, and you will have to pay out of pocket, or you'll have to find some other way to manage it. So if there really is an exemption that says that you can do that, you can transfer your title to a caregiver within the 5-year period that I'm not aware of, then that would be the better path, because you cannot move it into a trust. If you're trying to prepare her for for receiving Medicaid for long-term care right now within the next 5 years, then you're out of time.
Whew. You all have been such amazing and informed guests. You have brought so much knowledge to the table. I really feel like I need to have you back again, both of you, and give you more time. I do want to make sure Nikki Gentry, who's one of our regulars, is asking how can she locate someone in her area to further discuss these options. I'm going to share your information, but then you all can speak to so I just want everybody to get a screenshot of Mr. Darren Miles with Prudential Financial. There's his email address as well as his phone number, and you can get more information at prudential.com for him. So go ahead and get that screenshot really quickly. Wait, let me make sure we're not on there. There we go. And then also Chandra Bettner Gray, who is that managing attorney of a wonderful firm, her own. There's her email address as well as her phone number and her website. So you can get more information there as well. As it pertains to Nikki Gentry's question, we'll go ahead and ask if you have any information about that. But I just want to remind everybody who's part of the Newark Women Moving Forward campaign, please make sure that you let your friends and family know. If they're a woman living in Newark, the registration begins today and registration ends on 7/22. If they're interested in being part of the second cohort, come on in. That cohort is self-paced, and it is going to be an accelerated one. They can go at their own pace. However, it ends on August 31st before we start the next one. So if you have someone that you've been talking about this program and your successes, please make sure you invite them. Also, we're talking about Prudential. We do have a product with them called Blueprints to Black Wealth. If you have any questions about that or you want some more resources, please feel free to go ahead to that particular link, that website, and you can get more information about Blueprints to Black Wealth. For the Newark Women Moving Forward, we have a specific financial advisor team. So if you're part of the Newark Women Moving Forward campaign, Here are your advisors. Mr. Darren Miles is one of them. So please feel free to go ahead and hover your phone over these QR codes and you can reach them. I know specifically Armando Portino is Spanish speaking. So if you are one of our Spanish speaking participants, you can go ahead and reach out to him directly. And so we want to encourage you to do that. Before we say goodbye to our guests, we want to remind you that we do have Ask the Expert every Wednesday where we talk to subject matter experts. So please join us at noon for lunch. Bring your lunch, chat and chew. You can listen. It's a webinar, so you can feel free to listen as you are dining and get more information. That's every single Wednesday. And if you ever want to sign up or find out about more D-Free events, you can feel free to do that at dfreefoundation.org. Sign up for our online academy where you can get the D-Free curriculum at mydfree.org. And if you want to sign up for the $1 Billion Challenge, which is where we are looking to pay down in the Black and brown community, $1 billion worth of debt and accumulate $1 billion worth of savings in a communal effort, please, please, please join us. We don't need your social security number. We don't need any account numbers, and we certainly don't need your blood type. You can join us. It is a confidential website where we encourage you to participate with us. If you need any more information, feel free to contact us at 844-693-3733 or info@mydfree.org if you want to learn more about D-Free Global Foundation. And before we say good night, we want to thank God. We want to thank both Darren Miles for coming and being out with us tonight. We want to thank God for Chandra Bentner Gray for coming out. You are a wealth of information. And like I said, I know I'm going to get asked to bring you back. So thank you both for your time tonight and for the information. And if you have any suggestions as to where people outside of the state of New Jersey can reach people, please let us know and we'll drop that in the chat.
Thank you. If people email me, I do have some referral lists, but I don't know them off the top of my head, but I can provide some.
Excellent. What
Thank
about
you for
Mr.
having
Miles?
me.
No, thank you
Hi.
for your
Yes,
Mr.
I
Miles?
do. You can reach out to me. You have my information. I have a lot of referrals, and I have a referral network because I don't do everything. I do the planning, and now I have someone new that's on the screen, right? That's a part of my network, whether they know it or not. We'll talk later. But I do have a lot of everything from, are you paying the right amount of property insurance for your car, for your home? Do you have disability? These things are really, really important to understand. And so reach out. I have a lot of resources available.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Everybody, make sure you grab those links that are in the chat. We thank all of you for coming back. We look forward to seeing you next month at Monday Night Live. Thank you again for coming out. God bless you and good night. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.